Whenever I read the gospel stories of Easter Sunday, I'm struck by those first witnesses of the resurrection, those courageous women who remained faithful to the Lord Jesus throughout his earthly ministry and followed him to Calvary. They were rewarded for their fidelity by being the first recipients of the good news of the resurrection. When I think of those first witnesses of the risen Lord, I cannot help but think of the lives of countless women religious who influence and inspire our lives and give so much life to the church. Their lives and ministries continue to astound us. Salt+Light Television in Canada has had the great privilege of telling you the stories of some of these women religious ministering in various parts of the world in this brilliant 7-part series, Sisterhood, which gives viewers an exclusive look into the daily lives of some remarkable consecrated women united in a special way to Christ. Vietnam, the Philippines, Timor-Leste, Tanzania, Nigeria, Kenya, and Uganda are just some of the countries where we visit with sisters who toil tirelessly in the vineyard of the Lord. Educators, health professionals, prayer warriors, catechists, counselors, ministers to the poor, Sisterhood brings to light the myriad ways in which these wonderful women of the gospel shine a light on the dark parts of the world. Day in and day out, in nearly every country of the world, religious women provide an enormous service to the church, giving life to the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. Without their prayer, their wisdom, or their charity, the church would not be able to fulfill its mission of evangelization, education, and care of the poor among us. Produced in collaboration with Loyola University in New Orleans and throughout the generosity of the Hilton Foundation, Sisterhood shares with you the lives of sisters that are alabaster jars of nard poured out in active service, in decisive, courageous prophetic works, and in watchful presence to their Lord and Master. Their active faith in Jesus and their decisive following of him are finally the unchanging beauty and eloquence of the church's vocation. On this episode, we meet the Congregation of Sisters of St. Joseph. Welcome to Sisterhood.
As long as I am in the world, I will be a light for the world. I will be a word of truth, a song of hope, a hand outstretched for healing. As long as I am in the world, I will be a light for the world. I will be a word of truth, a song of hope, a hand outstretched for healing. As long as I am in the world, I will be a beacon of love for this weary world. So shine in me, oh shine in me, and I will bear the beams of your shining light. Oh shine in me.
Two things happened in 17th century France. One thing was the War of Religions, and that was the war between the Protestants and the Catholics. That had an incredible impact on the quality of clergy, as well as the quality of seminarians. So it decimated the the official religious institution in the smaller villages. Now, I'm not talking about Paris. I'm not talking about Lyon. I'm talking about Le Puy. The second thing that happened is the 30 Years' War between France and Spain. And that ended in 1647. We were founded in 1650. The city was essentially very, very, very poor and many, many, many widows. Father Madai is a Jesuit, and he was sent to do some outreach to these parishes. He noticed among the women that there were those who really, really wanted to live a life of God, but they didn't want to be cloistered. So he formed these little associations sprinkled across the French countryside in the Auvergne. 4 of them were illiterate, 2 of them were orphans. The bishop then noticed that something really good was happening, so he supported the 6 women in Le Puy, and the rest is history.
It really tickled me to see what was happening with the women uniting around the crochet and needlework. And it didn't dawn on us initially about how the sisters in Le Puy taught lace making to the women who were coming in off the streets. And it was one of those aha moments, just seeing how it changed their lives. We never planned it that way. It was just a gift from God.
What happened was I became homeless about 4 to 5 years ago. And I was real depressed. And one of my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous told me to come to the Women Outreach Center.
I came here during my time of really heartbroken, an ordeal that I never expected to be in. I was thrown into the shelter. In the process of how to get out of the challenges and the feelings, depressions I was going through, I found myself in the Catholic charity to meet the wonderful ladies. They are so wonderful. When I started, I was like tensed. So the tension in me made it not to be too straight. So when I started feeling free and mixing up with them, relaxation came into me, the curation work coming out perfectly.
It's valuable to them, I believe, because they're finally getting to know themselves and know their own strength and what they're capable of.
We make hats and scarves for the children. One day we took it to William Patrick. It's a center for the kids, babies and 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and they would sleep on the floor. And we took the hats and the scarves that we made, and we put it down by their beds while they were asleep. And some of them were working, they were awoke, and they was like, can I have that one? Can I have that one? And it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was doing something for somebody else. So that's why I keep coming back.
I like to come here because I feel as if I am being loved and being carried along. Being in a strange land, I have no one here. Once I come here, I feel as if I'm with my family.
One of the huge blessings of the place is that they accept each other where they are, and they really support one another. They know what it's like to be where maybe if a woman comes in off the street, which often happens, they know what that's like, and they do reach out to them.
Katrina actually came to New Orleans, and our building was flooded We removed the water, and then a tornado came through and set the roof on fire. And so the Army Corps of Engineers helped us by taking the water out of the canal, pouring it back into the building. And by that time, the building had to be deconstructed. And so we were trying to find something to do with our land that would accomplish our mission. Most people would think of building houses on that land, and we knew that wasn't. There was something bigger that was being asked of this land. We realized that land was really holy land. People had prayed on that land for a long, long time, so it had to be something noble enough to continue ministering to the people of New Orleans in our name. And so we just kept vigil with it for years. We met with the architect. This architect had connections with engineers from the Netherlands and Shanghai who knew how to manage water.
It was initially like something out of Popular Mechanics. I mean, you want to do what with their land? It's been my experience with the sisters that they truly think outside of the box.
And he began to design how this could happen, that water would come in.
It filters the water naturally and then holds it and puts it back out into the system. So what really makes this project unique is really based on using plants, using nature. The topography of the land is perfect. When it's not being used as that, it can be used as an educational facility. It can be used as a ballpark.
This is systemic change. Like when we were thinking of this, people in New Orleans were experiencing the water of Katrina as the enemy. And this is a way of transforming the consciousness to be water as a friend, to just let that holy land embrace it and hold it, bless it, and then send it back into the canals. We collaborated not only with those engineers and architects, but we began to collaborate with the city of New Orleans, imagine that, to talk the mayor into it. He didn't think this plan would go at all. We used this site as keystone design for a resiliency project of the Gentilly area and all of New Orleans, and we won the prize. So a great moment was when we could hand over a check of $143 million to the mayor for the resiliency of New Orleans based on this design. I think he was a little shocked. I think
it's a remarkable group of women that are willing to risk what they're risking. The return that they're asking for isn't financial. The return is trying to help other people.
May we become the compassion of God for our world. May we become mind, heart, and soul, God's compassion.
Sharing the State of the Heart is our primary spiritual activity. It's our primary form of prayer. And it's very, very simple, and it's very powerful. You sit in quiet and reflect on how God has been present in your life, let's just say over this past week.
I'm just mindful, too, that days like this, no matter how hard things have been or, just like any relationships can have their ups and downs and times when you get upset with each other as well as times when you celebrate and are joyful together. But there's something deeper that when we have these kinds of days, the other things fall away because you get down to what's really important.
In the Reglement, our early rule, it's said in very formal French, but the sisters will gather on Sunday afternoon for protestations, giving of myself to another. The American, the anglicized word, is sharing the state of the heart. So they would talk about, during the course of the week, this is what happened to them. And it was at that point then that they would divide the city. That's really how they planned their life. It was sharing the state of the heart out of that experience of God, look at what the need is, divide the city, and then go.
Sister Carol Crapo and I started having a conversation, and we invited Father Robert Casey to come to a meeting with us. And so over some tacos at a local restaurant, we started asking, well, what are some of the needs here? And this is very similar to the way that the sisters originally started our ministry. Where is unity lacking? Where is there a lack of love?
We didn't have to recreate hospitals. We didn't have to recreate social service agencies. But wasn't there was someone to hold hands and hold hearts and walk literally with people, primarily adults, to connect them with the services that could be the agency for maybe having fuller lives.
In the beginning, I think we saw it as connecting people to the resources and the services they needed. And as we got it up and running, we realized that there was a need for these resources and services to be connected to their clients. They were looking for ways to find entry into the community.
Buenos días. Bien, bien. Venía con Roberto que me...
Taller de Jose is almost like an invisible presence, a gentle, invisible, supportive presence. Joseph being the one who's behind the scenes, stirring the imagination. It's almost like this ghost organization that says, we're kind of behind the scenes, and we just want to be here to connect people and walk with people where they need to go.
This thing that started as a very simple conversation between three of us all of a sudden become a real important ministry within the Archdiocese of Chicago. So I'm still a little shocked at how far we've come, but it makes me hopeful for the possibilities for the future. Is there a place for Taller to expand its ministry into another neighborhood? Because accompaniment is needed all over.
I am with you on the journey, and I will never leave you. I am with you on the journey, always with you.
West Virginia is often on the worst list of lots of things: health, education, obesity. And so there are a lot of wonderful people who are trying to lift these things up so that, that life can get better and people can get healthier. Several years ago, the congregation had sponsored these, what we call thought leader meetings. And at one point we heard from a national thought leader, whatever you can do to support young farmers, do it.
Sister Kathleen has been a gardening mentor of mine for years, actually. She gave me some of my first gardening books 8-9 years ago when I was just starting to get my own hands dirty.
We got involved with the Sisters of St. Joseph, because they're developing a program for sustainable food sources. They came to us and asked us if we would speak to them, their group, about beekeeping, honeybees, the role of the bee as a pollinator. Without the honeybee, we'd survive as a species, but our diet would be severely changed. We try to make people aware of that, and to make them aware of the sources of their food, the food chain that it takes to develop that diet, and to develop a little bit better awareness and respect for the environment around them. In addition, we find that a lot of neighborhoods are developing community gardens that act as a food source for the bees, the pollen and the nectar. People seem to be much more aware of their role in sustaining an environment that's bee-friendly and to be prudent in the use of the food sources.
I was working at a youth center and noticing that these kids never get off the concrete. They never have an opportunity to get their hands in the dirt or to experience the natural world in ways that kids that I grew up around had the opportunity to do. We started some community gardens on vacant lots in the city, and it was so humbling. But man, when we put that in, people came to life. Everyone just started coming there and hanging out. I'm not sure what it is that breaks people out of their molds, but the garden brings people together who are really different people who otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity. Just sort of snowballed from there as kind of groundswell of community support came up behind it, to a point where we started asking the question, can we take these kind of neighborhood garden success stories, these small-scale vacant lots, and have it become something that actually revolutionizes or changes the food system and how people are eating in Wheeling.
Why I've got you guys down here today is because I want to change the way that you all think about food, or at least ask you to think about what food is to you, where it comes from, and what you can do with it.
One of the things that's very exciting is these schools are really building this into their curriculum. They're taking that food, they are using it in their food programs. So the consciousness is really being raised about better health.
Ohio Valley has only been in existence for a little over 2 years now. We built these greenhouses on land that used to be housing projects. We're putting an orchard on the other housing project site. We have a garden under the highway. We're growing really tens of thousands of dollars worth of food on land that would otherwise be thought of as abandoned or blighted land. The support of the sisters has been invaluable. And then this last year, through the Generous Promises grant, that's what made the greenhouses we're standing in possible. So that really came home in a big way over the last 12 months.
About 8 years ago, the Sisters of St. Joseph came to me and said that they wanted to find a hotel that was against sex trafficking, child sex trafficking. And I looked at the sisters and I honestly said, this isn't a third world country. The way I discovered sex trafficking was I went onto a website. You can buy a refrigerator and you can buy a child for sex. As I was researching this, I realized I could recognize the very hotels that these people, these children, these women were being sold in. As a meeting planner, we've been in many, many hotels. I spoke with law enforcement, and we ended up going and we were able to meet with that girl instead of arresting her and talk to her about getting out of the life and getting out of the game. This was not a foreign national. This was not a throwaway kid, as some people refer to them. This was a girl who got into a bad situation. These pimps come through the internet on Facebook, on Kik, on Instagram. They come right into your home without you knowing that they're there.
Healing Action Network is a nonprofit in St. Louis. We serve adult women who have a history of exploitation, and so that includes prostitution, pornography, stripping. Kind of our informal motto is we don't really care how you got there, you deserve a way out. Women who are engaged in prostitution were seen as perpetrators and not victims, and they were very much victims. I knew that the average age of entry into prostitution is 12 to 14, and in no way, shape, or form, a person 12 years old can choose really to engage in prostitution. There's something very wrong with that. What we forget about is that sometimes when they try to get up and leave and do something different, it's the outside community that's judging them. It's the outside community and calling them criminals. Most of the women that I've interacted with don't want to be there. They just don't see any other option. So what we create a space in the community where the women felt safe to come out. We have made exponential growth since then. 100% as a result of our relationship with the CSJ ministries.
We are impacted by everything that happens to everyone, and that it's not in God's plan, and it's not in the benefit of our human life to keep other people at a distance and judge and be afraid of one another, and judge who should be doing what. Any one of us could have been born into a different life and be sitting in a different chair right now.
At Healing Action, we believe that trauma in general happens in the context of relationships with other people. What we believe is that even though that's where the trauma happens, that's where the healing happens as well. It's not just about surviving. It's not just about showing up and getting through the day. It's about actually enjoying life and participating in life and participating in relationships. And I think that the values of the sisters create that.
We were never intended to be mainstream anything. We were always intended to reach out to the dear neighbor in need. And certainly in our society, those are the places where we will always be. So I hope we are edgy. I hope we don't ever become so complacent and so mainstream that we don't see those needs and move toward responding to them.
I had my own experience with exploitation and was able to get out with a network of folks in my community who were willing and able to reach out to me. And I was in a place where I was willing and able to get out. And I didn't know how I wanted to help other women, but I knew that I wanted to, and I knew that I needed to. And so that began the journey. I went to school. I graduated from graduate school in 2011 from Washington University, and I have a master's in social work. And I had no intention of starting an agency.
It was never my intent to go out and make a change to fight sex trafficking in the United States. I was a meeting planner. The sisters are the reason I felt I could have this power, and the sisters have stood behind me every step of the way.
The biggest process for me these last couple years, one was still doing some healing. You know, part of being a leader is being self-aware and understanding that I'm human and that I'm not going to be perfect and that people don't have to see me as perfect. And I think what the sisters did is to show me through their generosity and their continued support that you can be a leader and own it, and it's okay. You ladies are my goal. You are who I want to be as I move forward with my career. So.
In Le Puy, it's unique to all the world. There are 3 puys. Those are volcanoes that erupted during prehistoric times because the whole area was underwater. The lava couldn't flow down because it was underwater. So it built up, it pushed up, and pushed up, and pushed up, and pushed up, until you have these 3 giant volcanic needles.
From the beginning, we've always had people associated with us who caught that spirit, who hold that spirit, who understand it, and who live different lifestyles. We don't own this charism. It's in the scripture. Jesus said, "May they all be one." And we always will share this spirit of active, inclusive, unifying love with many, many, many people.
It's a miracle of the Holy Spirit that we were founded. And we just blossomed, bloomed, bloom, 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 bloom. So from then till now, here we are, 57 countries. I like to think that a spiritual image for us is we're the women of the volcano, that inside there's this energy, this energy, this energy. And when all things are in readiness, the energy jumps up.
There is a holy fire. There is a holy fire.